I would like to point out that New Zealand as an island nation, primarily reliant on trade, can only go about its daily business when the international rules-based system is strong and upholds security, free trade and travel. New Zealand relies on a safe and interconnected world in order to prosper. This rules-based system has for decades held strong, but now, because of aforementioned challenges, it is being sorely tested. It is vital that we work closely with our partners to uphold the system upon which we all depend. So just before I move to questions from the committee, or rather from my colleague being able to speak on veterans, Defence wanted to show you some of what they've been doing and what they're up to.
I'll never be embarrassed by New Zealand Defence Force. Our people are out there doing things in very dangerous situations. I'm just so pleased that they're going to be able to come home, and we're going to wrap some more support around them because they have been through a very, very challenging time. And
that I understand, but this is a Navy ship that's equipped to map the sea floor and it runs aground, Minister.
Yeah, so it's actually 20 years old, and I say that just to give some context. It was actually built as for that mapping in the North Sea for Norway, but it's now, obviously stuck now on a coral reef. We need to find out why that happened. Apparently it lost power, I'm aware of that, and it ended up aground on the reef. And of course that particular reef was being mapped because it hadn't been mapped since 1987. And as you all know, as we know, there's earthquakes, there's been tsunami, there's been all sorts of changes to those reefs. So it is really important that that mapping work does go on.
Our primary role is to conduct a series of assessments of the damage and also conduct our assessment of any potential risks and then offer our recommendations for mitigating those. It's surreal to think that our team was diving, conducting hull maintenance on the HMNZS Manawanui. So to see it underwater in the condition it's in is pretty eerie. So everyone's chipping in and everyone's doing their job to ensure that we're getting the most accurate picture as possible. As divers, we understand that this is hugely important. The reef itself is important to the local people. It's a life source for them. So for us to be able to provide and contribute in that recovery in order to help the locals is hugely important to us, and we're proud that we're helping in that.
This is one of the first images of the $100 million ship underwater, leaking some oil.
Breaking! Navy ship commander panics at thought of handling large hard object full of semen.
Manawanui crashed into a reef. By a little octopus, a friend of Dorothy. New Zealand's Navy is so lame, so spastic, lame and gay. Manawanui crashed into a reef.
Breaking! New Zealander crew stunned just minutes before sinking as lesbian captain announces all hands on dick.
The DEI hiring practices of the New Zealand Defence Force must be questioned. Their diversity policies and this LGBTIQ+ inclusion plan must be scrutinised. It seems as though they consider being gay, female or non-white as a key factor in recruitment, coming above actual competence.
The ship was in autopilot and the crew failed to disengage it.
New Zealand's Defence Minister defended her, stressing that her gender was not to blame for the disaster. Gray, originally from Harrogate, Yorkshire, previously served in the Royal Navy before moving to New Zealand with her wife.
Judith Collins, Minister of Defence, among other things, saying at the time, "I am New Zealand's first female Defence Minister. The Army has its first female Chief of Army. Manawanui's Captain, Commander Yvonne Gray, is female. We are all appointed on merit, not gender. A court of inquiry has been stood up to establish what caused this terrible incident. The one thing that we already know did not cause it is the gender of the ship's captain." I agree, it's not the gender of the captain that caused the ship to sink. It's incompetence. This is not about gender, this is about incompetence, and somebody needs to ask questions about A, the Navy's training program, and B, the Navy's hiring policies.
Good afternoon, Minister of Defence and Minister of Veterans. Wonderful to have you here with your teams. Really appreciate you joining us for this introductory hearing as we start our Scrutiny Week activities on the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee. We have obviously MOD and NZDF before our committee over the next few hours, but we're very pleased to have both of you here in your respective capacities as Minister of Defence, Associate Minister of Defence and Minister of Veterans to answer committee's questions and give some oversight, some views around where we're tracking some of the challenges as you see them and some of the amazing work being done by our fantastic service personnel here in New Zealand. So look, with that, I will hand over to you for some introductory comments and then I'm sure we'll have plenty of questions.
Look, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I've got a long speech, I'm not going to talk to it, primarily because I know we've only Chris Pink, the Associate Minister of Defence and Minister of Veterans, and we're only here for half an hour, so I want to leave as much time as possible for questions before you interrogate the Secretary of Defence and the Chief of Defence Force. But I will just say, as an introductory comment, that Defence is involved in cyclones, earthquakes, volcanoes, illegal, unregulated and unreported fishing, transnational crime, ceremonial events, Antarctica, VIP and trade delegations, MIQ and vaccination programs, search and rescue, deterrence, international nations, all of this, they are training other forces like Ukrainians to be trainers. They are working with snipers, teaching people how to be snipers. They're marine ordnance. They're all over the place, and they are a military force as well. So they're doing an enormous amount of work. If we didn't have defence, we would have to invent them. So I just want to get that really clear. Very much valued, and they, however, have obviously been through really difficult times. And, it's not over yet. It's still going to be difficult, but really happy to take any questions. And Chris, did you want to say a few words too?
Thank you. Obviously, support those comments about the breadth of work that our service people do. We're grateful for their service, and I'm certainly happy to turn over the time to you, Mr. Chair, and your team. Just acknowledging CDF, VCDF, various other uniformed civilian personnel, of course, Secretary of Defence.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, questions. The Honourable Penny Henare.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to both ministers and the team that have come in with you today. And can I endorse your words about huge gratitude and thanks to the work that our service personnel and civilian staff do right around the world. So thank you very much. Minister Collins, you will know that the number one matter, certainly in the list of priorities for much of the public, is the Manawanui. And we welcome the call for the inquiry. We also welcome the interim update on that last week. I wondered if you would like to share any further thoughts or comments around the interim update of last week and anything that you might be able to share on the Manawanui.
Well, no, really clear that this is a process required under the Armed Forces Discipline Act. The Navy has been running this program and this course, which is a Court of Inquiry rather. They've done exactly what they said they'd do, which is to give an interim report when they could. There is a full report, final report coming out in the first quarter of next year. There will be decisions made around any discipline issues as well. They are complying exactly with the law, and I think not only exactly with the law, but actually by making the interim, the contents as such of the findings of the interim report known to the public, they have exceeded what many people would have thought would have happened. They're doing an excellent job, and I support them.
Supplementary. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the interim update last week, yourself and the Chief of Navy mentioned the salvage operation starting on the 16th of December. I put to you from sources on the ground that there is a lot of unhappiness around what appears to be any lack of attempt to salvage or support local community in the time since the sinking. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, unlike you, former Minister Henare, I am not embarrassed by the Navy or the Defence Force. I actually think that they're doing an excellent job. They're dealing with a situation where there is diesel in tanks. They need to get that diesel off. The Navy is not in the habit of having situations like this, so they're having to deal with people who are experienced in being able to remove that. And then what happens to the ship, the wreck, is something which is going to be decided in consultation with the government of Samoa, which has been very clearly involved all the way through and kept involved. And there may be some unhappiness on the ground, but I think the vast majority of people are very aware that the Navy was there undertaking work to support the CHOGM hosting by Samoa, and they have been scrupulous in making sure that they fronted up, turned up, working on that. They had divers in there almost straight away, dealing with everything they could, and they have been, I think, exemplary in their behaviour.
Final question on that matter. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With that in mind and the tragedy of the sinking of the Manawanui, of course, it puts a strain on the rest of the fleet and the challenge around readiness, and we know the challenge around concurrent events. I wondered, Minister, if you had any view or is there a plan, or have you discussed the plan over the past few months since the sinking of the Manawanui about how the Navy and the NZDF at large might be able to continue to support operation?
No, it's a thoughtful question, thank you. I don't see the sinking as a tragedy because nobody lost their lives and no one was seriously injured. If people had lost their lives and we had 73 or 75 body bags coming back on those planes, that would be a tragedy. This is extremely unhappy situation. The Navy did not ask for this to happen. Nobody set out one day to have a terrible day at work, but clearly a few people have had a terrible day. It is terrible, but it is not a tragedy in terms of body bags. In addition to that, when you talk about the ability to be able to crew, the Navy that I've inherited as the Minister of Defence is one that was already had ships tied up at the dock, and the reason for that is they didn't have enough crew. And that is because they suffered 17.7% attrition rates in the last year when you were the minister, and they are now down to 7.2, so they are actually recovering. They do have a couple of ships that they, and particularly one ship, the Otago, that they are looking to get ready to go out and undertake most of the work that the Manawanui was able to take, and that the crew will be able to be redeployed on that. So we will have one less ship tied up at dock. We will have that crew absolutely redeployed, and we will be back out there with our tails up, not down. We'll be out there doing the job. And I'm really proud of the way that the Chief of Navy has stepped up on this.
Thank you. Supplementary question from Tiano Tuiono.
Thank you, Minister, for those reflections. I know many of us were wondering about the state of what's happening with the Manawanui. I do have just one question, and that's around food sovereignty, because I know that folks that are living in those near villages had questions around the support around making sure that they could get food. So I was wondering if that's actually the kind of work that's being done in that space.
It's probably the sort of detail I will ask Defence, and perhaps when you've got them for 2 hours for a questioning, you could ask them about Kai. Thank you. It's not really my area, but I don't think anyone's been missing in terms of that. But there will be some people who felt very upset and whose natural fish gathering had been interrupted, and that is very, very difficult for people.
Thank you.